It's time to start learning how to solve systems of equations, which is two equations at once. And the first way that you're going to learn how to solve them is a table. You will literally never do it this way ever again after today. But yeah, you're here anyway, so let's learn how to do it. So here's our first example. We need to solve for both x and y. And we can do that because we have two equations. As long as you have the same number or more equations as you do the number of letters, you can solve for any amount of letters. So to solve using a table, what we need to do is guess and check. So we need to pick a number for x, and then we're going to plug it into both of these equations and see what we get for y. And if we get the same number for y on both equations, then that means we found our answer. So here's the table we're going to be using. We're going to put in the number for x, get something for the first equation and the second equation. So let's go ahead and start by using 0 for x. We'll start with some simple numbers. We'll start with the first equation, y equals x plus 1. So if we plug in 0 for x, that just means we're replacing x with 0. So let's go ahead and do that. In this case, we have y equals 0 plus 1. Now, 0 plus 1 is 1. So in this case, y is going to be equal to 1. So we're going to go ahead and put 1 here in our table. So now let's do the same thing on the other equation. Y equals 2x minus 2. Let's go ahead and replace x with 0. And you'll notice here that the x is next to a number. We're going to go ahead and put 0 in parentheses, just so that we can tell that these are two different numbers. If we had just put this without parentheses, then it would say 20, and we don't want that. So remember that if you have two numbers next to each other like this, or a number next to a letter, that means multiplication. So 2 times 0 is 0. And we're just going to carry the minus 2 down. And 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So our y of the second equation is negative 2. So we're going to go ahead and put that in our table. So we have not found the correct answer because 1 and negative 2 are different numbers. So let's go ahead and try 1 for x. So let's go ahead and plug in 1. Y equals 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So y is equal to 2. So we're going to go ahead and put in 2 on our line right here. Now let's go ahead and try the other equation. Y is equal to 2 times 1 minus 2. Well, 2 times 1 is 2, and then minus 2. And 2 minus 2 is 0. So the second one is going to be 0. So 1 is not correct either. So we need to figure out what number to guess next. You could always use any number, but what I'm noticing here is, you see how these two numbers here, they are 3 apart from each other. And these numbers here, they're only 2 apart from each other. So what that tells me is we want them to be 0 apart from each other. So if we keep guessing higher numbers, they're going to get closer and closer together. So let's go ahead and try 2. Y equals, we change x for 2. 2 plus 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So y is going to be equal to 3. And we'll go ahead and put that in our table. Now let's do the same thing for the other equation. Y equals, we're going to plug in 2, and the minus 2 carries over. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then minus 2 carries over again. 4 minus 2 is 2. So we're going to go ahead and put in 2 in our equation. And you'll notice here we're even closer now. 3 and 2 are only 1 apart. So I have a feeling that if we keep going higher and try plugging in 3, that's going to end up being our answer. So let's go ahead and put 3 in our table. And now I'm realizing that we're running out of room here. You see 3, it's right there. Y equals, in this case, it's going to be 3 plus 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. So y is 4. So we're going to go ahead and put in 4 into our table. And now let's do the same thing on the other equation. Y equals 2 times 3 minus 2. 2 times 3 is 6 minus 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. So we're going to put in 4. And as you'll see, here we have two numbers that are equal. So we figured out our answer. But what is it? Well, remember, we're solving for x and y. We know what x is. X is 3. And in both cases, y was 4. So y is 4. So there's two ways you can write your answer. I guess it just depends on what your teacher or professor prefers. You could write this as x equals 3 and y equals 4. That's true. We solved for x and y. Or you could write this as a point on a graph, which you would put the x on the left and the y on the right. So it would be 3, 4. So there we go. Our answer is x is 3 and y is 4. So here's another example. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video, try to solve this one for yourself, and then unpause it and see how you did. So you may notice here that these look a little different. Y is not by itself this time. Before, when we plugged something into X, it was super easy. We just solved everything and it was already equal to Y. But in this case, Y is not by itself. So there are two ways that we can do this, and either one is fine. You could just make a table immediately and go ahead and do it. You'll plug in something for X, and then you'll probably have to do a little one-step algebra equation or something to figure out what Y is equal to. Your second option, and arguably the faster way to do it, is to solve these for Y first, and then go ahead and do the table so that you don't have to keep doing it over and over and over again. So in this case, we have both equations not solved for Y. So let's go ahead and solve these for Y. So X plus Y equals 5. To solve it for Y, we need to get Y by itself. And to do that, we'll get rid of this X. So we'll get rid of this X by subtracting it from the equation. So these cancel, and on this side, we're just left with Y. We have to do the same thing on the other side. So 5 minus X is, well, 5 minus X. So this is our first equation, Y equals 5 minus X. So now let's solve for Y on the other equation. In this case, we need to get rid of this 2x to get y by itself. So we need to subtract 2x from both sides of the equation. On this side, these cancel out. And no, we're not left with just y. Remember, this minus sign is to say we're left with minus y. And on the other side, we're left with 1 minus 2x. So now how do we get rid of this minus sign on y? Well, there are two ways you can think about this. You can just add a negative sign to both sides of the equation. These two would turn into a positive, and we're just left with y. And on the other side, we have to apply the minus sign to both parts of this parentheses. So we have minus 1, and then we have minus minus 2x. Two minuses make a positive, so we're going to have plus 2x. The other way you could have thought about it, it's quite literally the same thing, but remember that if you have a minus sign, like minus y, this is really saying minus 1 times y. So if you want to think of that as a minus 1, you divide both sides by minus 1. It would do basically the same thing. So this is our final equation on the second side. So let's go ahead and do our table. I've gone ahead and changed the problem to our new equations just so that we avoid any confusion here. These are the equations we're going to be using because these are equal to the ones that we had before. So to make things easier, as always, we're going to go ahead and start with 0. And we're going to go ahead and plug in 0 into both of these equations. So y equals 5 minus, remember x is being replaced with 0, and 5 minus 0 is 5. So y is going to be equal to 5, and we'll go ahead and put 5 into our table here. So now let's plug in 0 into the other equation. Y is equal to negative 1 plus 2 times 0. And remember, we're putting in parentheses so that this doesn't look like a 20. So y is equal to negative 1 plus, and remember 2 times 0 is just 0. And negative 1 plus 0, well, the 0 isn't doing anything, so y is equal to negative 1. So we're going to go ahead and put in negative 1 as our answer here. Now, 5 and negative 1 are pretty far apart, so I think we're kind of far from the answer, but let's go ahead and test out 1. So y is equal to 5 minus 1, and y is equal to 4, because 5 minus 1 is 4. So we're going to go ahead and put 4 into our table here. And now we're going to go ahead and plug in 1 on the other one as well. Y is equal to negative 1 plus 2 times 1. So y is equal to negative 1 plus 2 times 1 is 2. So we have negative 1 plus 2. That's the same thing as saying 2 minus 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1. So we're going to go ahead and put 1 into our table. So before, when we put in 0, these numbers were 6 apart. They were pretty far apart, right? But in this case, 4 and 1, they're only 3 apart from each other. So we're pretty quickly getting closer to the answer if we keep going this direction with our table. So let's go ahead and keep going this direction by trying out 2. Now let's say that these numbers were actually getting farther apart as we got bigger numbers. Then we would actually start testing out numbers the other way. So we would start testing out negative 1, negative 2, and so on. So let's go ahead and test out 2. Y is equal to 5 minus 2. So y is equal to 3. So we're going to go ahead and put in 3 in our table here. Now let's try out the other equation. So we're going to put in 2 for x here. 2 times 2 is 4. And negative 1 plus 4, that's the same thing as saying 4 minus 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. So we're going to put in 3 in our table here. And you'll see that these are the exact same number. So we found our answer. So how would you write our answer? Well, x is going to be 2. and y is going to be 3, right? Because it's 3 in both equations. So we're either going to write our answer as x equals 2 and y equals 3, or we could write it as a point on a graph, which would be 2, 3. So there you go. Our answer is x is 2 and y is 3. So now you know how to solve systems of two equations, but you may have noticed that that was long and really tedious, especially when you have to start dealing with negative numbers in some of your problems. That's not fun. But there are faster ways to solve systems of equations. If you want to learn how to solve it by graphing, which is the next fastest way to do it, then you can watch this video right here. And as always, if you have any questions about this, then go ahead and leave it in the comments and I'll be sure to answer. Thanks for watching.